In March 2024, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence issued its most recent annual threat assessment, focusing primarily on foreign threats. Last month, the Department of Homeland Security issued its 2025 Homeland Threat Assessment, concluding that the threat of domestic and foreign terrorism in the homeland remains high. The first threat identified by DHS was potential violent extremist responses to domestic sociopolitical developments, particularly the 2024 election cycle. Remember, that assessment gives the view of DHS Secretary Mayorkas, who has kept our border flung open to all comers for 4 years. While useful collections of information, these reports only begin to explain what could happen in the coming months. Background. There is good reason to believe the deep state has been involved in frustrating or overriding critical decisions made by American presidents for at least 3 decades. Nearly 8 years ago, Senator Schumer warned, or threatened, incoming President Trump not to criticize the intelligence community because they have 6 ways from Sunday of getting back at you. This threat has even greater relevance for his second term. The leadership of the intelligence community no longer serves the nation, it first serves itself. And it serves the nation's ultra-wealthy ruling class. It also serves what President Eisenhower warned against, the military-industrial complex. And we have come to see that it particularly serves the pharmaceutical industry. In 2016, President Trump was the first outsider to break through this control system, largely because the political pundit class gave him no chance to win. Nonetheless, they geared up quickly to undermine his first term. Consider how relentless they were last time in their deep state assault on our president. Looking back, it appears that President Trump's 2020 election disrupted what had been in effect since President Obama's promise to fundamentally transform America. That effort can best be understood as a communist color revolution, much like what the deep state has funded and conducted in numerous other countries, primarily including in the former USSR. The Marxist common denominator is manifest. How else could Barack Hussein Obama, a community organizer trained under anti-American pastor Jeremy Wright, become president? How could Kamala Harris be elected to the vice presidency in view of her family embrace of Marxism? And how does someone like John Brennan, who admits voting for a communist for president of the United States, become head of the CIA? The techniques perfected by our deep state in color revolutions in other countries appear to be in the works domestically. Now, in 2024, the re-election of President Trump has given the country a second reprieve from the plans by people like President Obama, but that does not mean the threat is over, or even that the threat level is reduced. It only means that the threat has changed. Indeed, the rapid declaration of President Trump's victory by establishment media in the early morning hours of November 6, 2024 was completely unexpected by most Americans. There was every reason to believe that the result would have been contested in the press as it was in 2016 and 2020, or in the courts as with President George W. Bush in 2000. There was something that felt strange about that victory. Upon reflection, it seems to have come too quickly and too easily. Why did the left concede the election during the early morning hours of November 6, 2024? The decision not to contest President Trump's 2024 victory might have been the result of an electoral victory of such a magnitude that it reached the level President Trump termed as too big to rig. However, it just might have been the result of a calculated choice of the deep state not to use their power to rig the outcome due to the obvious lack of support for VP Harris. Rigging an election to favor Harris would have been so obvious a steal that it would provoke a complete lack of public confidence in our elections. However, the fact that the deep state decided to accept President Trump's victory on Election Day does not mean they have accepted the notion that he will be sworn into office on January 20, 2024, or that he will be able to function. More likely, it means they are relying on a secondary strategy to maintain power and thwart change. The truth is, the deep state cannot afford to allow President Trump to implement his plans to reform America. Robert F. Kennedy, Jr.'s commitment to health and a return to science-based decision-making is an unparalleled threat to a pharmaceutical industry made profitable by immunity from liability for vaccines causing harm, lack of safety testing, and mandatory vaccine schedules. The authority of an Attorney General to bring accountability to those who have threatened our republic would end both lawfare against patriots and cut back corruption on a massive scale. Tulsi Gabbard's commitment to seeing and acting on truth makes her a threat to a system of government based on lies. Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy's effort to cut waste, fraud, and abuse eliminates the deep pool of wasteful spending from which corrupt Americans become fabulously wealthy. Pete Hegseth's effort to rid the military of DEI threatens those in the officer corps who have profited from such nonsense. Linda McMahon's effort to eliminate the Department of Education makes unemployable those who take our money and refuse to educate our children in anything but cultural Marxism. On the other hand, whenever a key Trump appointee is not made the subject of accusations, attacks, and ridicule, that appointee was likely a mistake, someone who truly does not share President Trump's agenda or vision. If the deep state's toadies in the press are not outraged by a Trump appointee, that is a warning sign. In every area of government, and thus every area of our country, President Trump presents an existential threat to those who have profited from undermining our nation. Threat assessment. Here are the scenarios I see that could be used to derail President Trump. Scenario 1: Assassination. The greatest threat is, of course, the risk of a third assassination attempt. The need for President Trump to provide for his own security, and not rely on that provided by the Biden administration is obvious. However, the prior two assassination attempts known to the American people have already caused federal law enforcement to be viewed with such suspicion that there likely are other strategies in the works. I am certainly not saying not to worry this threat, just that it is not the only threat. Scenario 2: Conventional resistance. The deep state certainly could be expected to resist President Trump's second term in the same ways it resisted the first term: refusal to confirm appointments, special counsel investigations, lawfare against his appointees, blue state lawsuits against his policies, resistance by Obama-style judges, impeachments, leaks of classified information, etc. In addition, there could be some extra wrinkles to the strategy added, but generally more of the same. In 2 years, the tactics of the deep state will depend on the outcome of the 2026 midterm election, where the incumbent administrations generally lose seats. Scenario 3: Violent resistance. Videos of illegal immigrants indicate that the bulk of persons illegally entering the nation during the Biden administration were military-aged men, including many from China, the Middle East, Central and South American gangs, etc., that likely were assisted by non-friendly nations or organizations. There is every reason to believe that a fifth column lives among us, paid for by the government, which is to say, the taxpayer. These people will not leave the country willingly. Rather, there are indications that hostile powers, domestic or international, could arm and train such persons, or already have done so. This could be much more dangerous than the urban rioting and arson of the George Floyd era, bringing violence to the entire nation, or destroying infrastructure to undermine the economy. Now, more than ever, there is every reason for every patriotic American to own firearms and to be trained in their use. The presence of millions of former, pre-woke, military and law enforcement personnel and gun owners would present a powerful counterforce, but contamination of water supplies, disruption of the grid, interruption of the supply chain for food, etc. are still possibilities. Consider the havoc caused by the recent incident of a single bullet hitting a commercial airliner in Texas. Scenario 4: Provoking war. While President Biden has been stumbling around the rainforest, his administration authorized Ukraine's launch ATACMS missiles to sites deep into Russia, extremely escalating the conflict. The K has followed the lead of the U.S. The efforts by the United States to move the eastern border of NATO to the doorstep of Russia was a provocation, but mild compared to the U.S. facilitating the launch of these missiles. It is as if the Biden team, on the way out, wants to provoke Russia to respond, so they can justify some type of radical action such as staying in power beyond January 20th, much as Zelensky remains in power due to Ukrainian elections not being held while under martial law. Some fear these people are so unhinged they would rather see the country burn than turn it over to President Trump. I do not believe that is their plan, but I believe that this unelected, unnamed, and anonymous group of deep state puppet masters are highly dangerous to the nation. Scenario 5: False Flag War. Should President Putin choose to be patient even while under attack, refusing to take the bait and retaliate, the deep state certainly has experience creating a false flag attack on the United States and blaming Russia, and likely Trump. If you have any doubt that this could happen, take the time to read a memorandum dated March 13, 1962 proposing just such a strategy to justify an attack on Cuba. Again, the American people should be ready for this ruse, and refuse to accept it. Conclusion. The best strategy the deep state has is to declare every pro-American, anti-deep state policy to be sourced in Russia. A Putin puppet. A Russian agent. This is projection, at its worst. Do not buy it. The media will say that people like Tulsi Gabbard and I who have served in the military for a combined half-century are the Russian agents because we disagree with communist supporter John Brennan. Does that make sense? The media will say that the United States should be able to supply and operate the weapon systems to attack Russia, and President Putin should sit back and take it. Does that make sense? Is that how we would respond to attacks of Russian missiles by Russians against our country? You may not believe it, but there are truly evil forces operating at the highest levels of our own government. They do not have the best interests of the American people at heart. President Trump is going after them, and they are fighting back. So here is an important takeaway. If Russia was to retaliate in response to our attacks on the Russian homeland, or if our deep state was to conduct a false flag attack on our own nation, the fault would lie here with the Biden administration and its controllers in the deep state, not Russia. However, every resource of our deep state would work 24/7 to place blame on Russia for an unprovoked attack. The American people must be ready to be fed this lie. You can bet every effort must be made to avert war with the greatest nuclear power in the world, Russia. Yet, there is every reason to believe that the Biden administration is willing to risk such a war. I explain what needs to be done in my November 18 article, Democrats Must Remove President Biden Now. The best solution is for Biden to be removed from office under the 25th Amendment, which provides, whenever the Vice President and a majority of either the principal officers of the executive departments or of such other body as Congress may by law provide, transmit to the President pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives their written declaration that the President is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, the Vice President shall immediately assume the powers and duties of the office as acting President. 8 of the 15 cabinet members set out in 5 U.S.C. Section 101 would need to agree. State, Treasury, Defense, Attorney General, Interior, Agriculture, Commerce, Labor, HHS, HUD, Transportation, Energy, Education, Veterans Affairs, and Homeland Security. Failure to take this action should disqualify all these persons from any future government service. If the Democrats fail, the Republicans in the House must impeach, as has been suggested by Congressman Keith Self, RTX, but Republicans are planning to go on their Thanksgiving vacation as Rome could be burning. Speaker Mike Johnson must demonstrate leadership and take the necessary actions to stop a war. Americans must tell Congress not to bail out on our nation so they can have turkey dinner. You do not want to know what would happen in the event of nuclear war. And the truth is, you would not want to know how bad living conditions could be if we enter any type of Russia. If the American people were to believe that the nation was truly at war with Russia, they would accept all types of controls on them, including bans on speaking truth about government duplicity. Consider Lincoln's arrest of civilians in the Civil War, Wilson's arrests during World War I, and the internment of the Japanese during World War II. President Trump wants to be a force for peace. It is impossible to believe President Trump would endanger the nation by supporting this insane effort to launch missiles deep into Russia. He can solve this problem. Somehow, we just must get the nation to January 20th.